Church here, and welcome to the Game Grinder, and today we're doing a pickup video, and this is kind of like a pickup video special edition, or something like that, I guess. There's kind of a unique experience involved here that I think deserves its own video, and honestly too, at the same time, if I would combine this stuff with my normal pickup video, which is coming soon, it would be probably too long of a video, so and yeah, I think this kind of deserves its own. Well, then there's a little backstory to this, and I'll try to keep it as brief as I can just because we got some games to talk about here. So many of you already know this, some of you might not if you don't follow me on social media, but obviously I wear a lot of metal shirts in my videos, and not do I only just wear metal shirts, I actually go to a lot of concerts, and that's kind of one of my things. I like going to concerts, I like getting shirts to support bands. So that's pretty much why you see all these different shirts all the time, because I'm always going to concerts. Have been now for about 17 years, and I've seen hundreds of bands. Then also with that being a gaming YouTube channel, I met Corpse Flood Gaming some time ago, and I've mentioned him before. We did some trades, did some shout outs and stuff. But yeah, really great guy. We've been talking for quite a while, and of course it just happens to be that he is a fellow metalhead, and there is a concert that was a couple days ago at the time of recording this video anyways, and he was a big fan, I'm a big fan, we both wanted to go, so hey, things aligned and we were able to make it happen. And the cool thing is I'm actually in Minnesota in the Twin Cities, and he's just over the border in Canada, so he made a 5-hour drive to come down. Anyone who's willing to drive a distance to check out a concert, I think, deserves mad respect, and definitely mad respect. Corpse Flood, his videos don't do him justice. Awesome guy. We had a blast. It was such a good time. I'm so glad it happened, and we're definitely going to have to make this happen again. So, added with that, with some of the things I picked up, he came bearing gifts, which is awesome in itself. Alright then, let's jump into it. So the first thing I got here from Corpse Flood was a NES Amiibo. Now I've wanted one of these since they were released. These have been really hard to get unless you're willing to pay 2-3 times what they're worth, and I'm not willing to do that. You know, I was in hopes that Nintendo would kind of pull through and re-release these. I mean, it took them a long time to get around to doing it, which I think is pretty shitty. A lot of people did get shafted and did pay extra for these because they weren't willing to meet consumer demand, which I just don't understand, especially, you know, it's a business, they want to make money. Why don't you want to make money? Shut up and take my money, you know? It's silly stuff. But, super stoked to finally have an NES Amiibo, and I got a couple other games here. The first one is Lords of the Fallen. Corpse Flood hit me up, asked me if I had any interest in this one. I didn't know much about it. I'd heard little mentions here and there, so I looked into it. Looked pretty cool, and yeah, so we'll get around to checking this out eventually. And then this one was really cool. In previous video I'd mentioned that I hadn't played any of the later Zelda games, and he's like, hey, you want to loose Legend of Zelda Wind Waker? And I was like, oh yeah, totally, of course. Yeah, so now at this point with the GameCube like collector's edition multi-pack one, I believe I have most of the Zelda games. Of course I've played all the retro ones, and just recently I played through Ocarina of Time for the first time with some friends, so it's great to be able to jump into the next games if I want to. Then on to the game hunting itself. So we decided to stop at 3 different stores before we went to the metal concert, and things worked out pretty well for me this time. I actually found one of my holy grails. It was never an expensive game, but it's a game that I've been looking for years. I could always get it online, but that kind of takes the fun out of it. And the couple times I had seen it in the past, it was a little more than I was willing to spend. You know, I don't want to go crazy and spend way more than the game's worth, but I'm definitely willing to spend retail value. So I finally have picked up Wonder Boy in Monsterland, and this is a kind of like a Zelda clone for the Sega Master System. This is a game that one of my friends when I was younger had, and I was able to borrow it from him for a few days, which was kind of a drag because he only let me borrow games for a few days at a time before I had to give them back. So I never really got a chance to really delve into this until later when I was able to rent it. Great game. Really looking forward to getting Dragon's Trap and Monster World eventually. Those I haven't spent much time with. I've only played little bits of those, but finally got Wonder Boy in Monsterland. No manual, unfortunately, but the cart is in pretty decent shape, so no complaints there. And then, of course, many of you know that I am kind of a PC gamer, ahead of actually a lot of my retro games and whatnot, and got a pretty cool deal here. I know a lot of people are kind of harsh on this game, but it's a game that I actually really enjoyed myself. I actually the first computer that I ever built. I got help from a friend, taught me how to build computers. Actually kind of got me into computers like way more so than I was at the time, and it was to be able to run this game on Ultra, and it'd be interested to know if anybody can guess what this is before I say it. But I picked up Doom 3 and the expansion Resurrection of Evil. And these were only $1 each, and the guy was like, you know what, you're buying a few other things, so you can just have them. So that's pretty cool. I don't have these games in a box. Originally, when I played them, sadly I'd pirated them. I've talked about that in the past, that, you know, way back in the early 2000s, I didn't really have money, so kind of pirated a lot of my PC games, which was advantageous to me. But so it's cool to have that complete in box. And then a couple other just little random cool things I picked up. Pretty fairly priced, I would say, and one is a Top Secrets Password Nintendo Player's Guide. Basically, this has codes and cheats for quite a few games. I'm not really going to run through them here, but good selection, and, you know, this was under $10, so that's awesome. And then this one was actually kind of an oddity. I'd never seen anything like this before, and this is a Nintendo Power Index. And basically what this has is a complete reference to all the games featured in the first 50 volumes of Nintendo Power. So it tells you what games are in what volumes, and then there's a lot of other information, like page numbers and kind of some of the articles included, and mentions any other extras. So that's pretty neat. You know, if you want to look up a certain Nintendo Power, I mean, you can probably check online and figure out what it is, but having a complete reference guide for that is pretty sweet, I think. And we'll see, maybe I can find the later ones for this somewhere down the road. Now, these next pickups here are not games, and it's kind of one of those things where better judgment escapes me at the time. So with this, a little backstory is I actually used to have a pretty large action figure collection. Not what you think necessarily, but basically there was 2 or 3 different series of action figures for original Resident Evil and Resident Evil 2. And I had pretty much all the action figures, and basically they all filled like a half-size refrigerator-sized box. Like I can't remember exactly how many they were, but some years ago I decided that if I was going to stick with game collecting and, you know, have all these games and shelves, that I should probably make a choice and get rid of some of the other things that I had that were taking up space, that weren't really doing anything, just sitting in boxes. So besides just the Resident Evil figures, I also had the first 2 series of the Todd McFarlane toys, kind of like anime series, things like Akira and Tenchi Muyo, Armitage and stuff like that. And unfortunately I made the decision to get rid of those, and now years later I'm kind of kicking myself in the ass for doing so. Not necessarily that I don't have the space now, but I think it would be cool to have the extra kind of collectible stuff, because really for the longest time with collecting it was pretty much like strictly games. I wasn't doing any extra stuff, but now, you know, we're all in, so I'm sure this won't be the last time that I decide to pick random action figures. And basically I was looking at these 2 action figures, and I asked him what the prices were because I couldn't see them. He told me what they were. I was like, I probably shouldn't, just because they were a little more than I thought was justification for these random purchases for things I'm not necessarily collecting. So then he was like, you know what, I'll give them to you for half off. And I was like, ugh, you got me. So anyways, I decided to pick up 2 action figures here. One is of Purgatory, and one is Lady Death. And basically, Lady Death was one of the comic series that I used to be a huge fan of. I still have all my Lady Death comics. I haven't been collecting comics since early 2000s is kind of when I stopped. I was going pretty serious for quite a few years. One of my favorite comics. They did an animated film adaptation of the comic. It's okay. It's worth checking out. I used to have that as well, and with that as well, I also sold my entire DVD collection, so I don't have a DVD collection anymore. And now, of course, I want to re-pick up some of the like game-based movies that I had. But then also Purgatory was kind of like the arch villain in a way, always dealing with it. And she eventually got her own spin-off comic. But yeah, big fan of the series. Cool little action figures that I got for a pretty decent price, so that is always cool. Then the next store that we went to High Score in North St. Paul. It might be Maplewood, I'm not sure exactly. It's like right on the border. but I picked up a few things there. So the last couple times I'd been there, I'd always noticed that they had a pretty decent Sega CD collection. Not like any of the high-end stuff, but a lot of the more like common Sega CD games. And of course, you know, a few months back I picked up a Sega CD finally, and I've always had a really soft spot for FMV games, like especially like Dragon's Lair, Space Ace, you know, the Don Bluth stuff. But there's a lot of other games that I've always wanted to play that I've never had access to. And the first one was actually like when I was younger, when the Sega CD first came out. I had a friend, and me and him were always talking about video games and looking at game magazines and like, oh man, I wish I could play that game, I wish I could play that. And there was one game in particular that always like blew our minds, and we thought it looked so cool. And I know it's not like a good game by any means, but yeah, I just had to have it. It's complete in box Ground Zero Texas for the Sega CD. Has the foam insert and manual and everything, and the divider's not broken, so that's pretty neat. I will have to try to get to this one kind of soon, because this is one of those games that's just, it's always been in the back of my mind as a game that I need to play, just, you know, just to bring back that excitement and, you know, live the dream of the young church. So then I decided to pick up Sewer Shark as well, another FMV game, but this one is actually a pretty cool game. It's already been spoiled to hell for me. I've watched tons of videos on a lot of Sega CD games, because I never thought I'd actually have a Sega CD, and with getting a really good deal, you know, things work out, and now I'm collecting for the Sega CD, so got Sewer Shark as well. And then the last game that I picked up during our game hunting was Evil Dead, Hail to the King. So it's kind of silly that I've never played the Evil Dead games. As much of a fan I am of the series, like I absolutely love the Evil Dead. I love Bruce Campbell. He's like one of my favorite dudes. And yeah, so now I have this, and I'll have to get the PS2 one eventually. And the last place we went to was We Got Game, and I've mentioned them a couple times. There was a couple of the local Minnesota Retro Gamer Society meetups at, the previous one was the Mankato location for We Got Game, and just not too long ago was the one in Uptown, Minneapolis. And that stuff will end up in my next pickup video. But yeah, we had to go check that out again and see what we could find. Unfortunately, because of what I picked up, I was kind of low on funds. You know, I needed to get my band shirt and stuff, so I didn't pick up any other games there, but Corpse Flood got some pretty sweet stuff. So again, if and when he does a pickup video, I will link it and I will share it, because yeah, he gets some seriously awesome pickups. So of course, yeah, that's pretty much it. I got kind of rambly here, so there's some weird edits. But hopefully you enjoyed what I have shown here, and of course, as always, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on some of these games. And of course, again, huge shout out to Corpse Flood Gaming. Had a blast, man, you're awesome, and I'm really looking forward to hanging out again. And of course, I will talk to you later, and I would encourage everybody to check him out. Link in the description, of course, and hopefully pretty soon here we can start seeing maybe some kind of captured footage. Wink, wink. And yeah, so I think that will do it for this special edition Corpse Flood Gaming pickup video. So, of course, as always, love to hear your thoughts. You know, comment below, all that fun stuff, and I will talk to you next time on the Game Grinder.